It's over 9,000!
Yeah, just put it. Yeah, no, yeah. Just take the body over there. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, oh, hang on. Greetings, Super Elite Warriors, and welcome to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelli, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force, on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time. Unfortunately, I am not joined by my co-host at this time. You see, after Bekinney and I fought, and dueled to the death, I was left a gelatinous puddle, conscious of my surroundings but incapable of taking full form. Ultimately, I have pulled myself back together, and I am slowly stabilizing, but Bekinney is dead. A valued member of the Frieza Force has taken his body away just now, a charred husk. He will be autopsied, and we'll learn more about his species' physiology as well as the method used to infiltrate and control his mind. I weep for my co-host, and I regret to inform all of you that...
Jelli? Jelli, can you hear me?
Bekinney? No, it can't be.
I'm picking you up on my scouter. Blast's supposed to throw me halfway across the planet.
Listeners, my battle with Bekinney has left me exhausted. Not only physically, but mentally as well. I'm imagining I can hear Bekinney.
Because you can hear me.
In fact, I think I may be cracking under the mental stress of it all, and I have taken on Bekinney's voice and personality to compensate.
Dude, you can't be this obtuse.
Obtuse? I watched them carry your dead body away. I'm clearly experiencing some sort of DID phenomenon here.
Okay, first of all, not how DID works. Second, if you would have ever let me explain how I can always seem to die and then come back...
I don't want to hear it anymore, recruit. Hey, wait a minute.
What?
Well, I'm clearly pretty good at this. All the time I spent mocking you behind your back has made my impression of you pretty good. I've even got that whiny note down pat.
Whiny note?
I can work with this.
I'm trekking my way across the planet with no supplies, and you're having a psychotic break, and you can work with this?
Yeah, it'll be like you never died.
Oh no, I definitely died. It's just that I also...
Shush. Listen, shut up. I have an idea.
Your ideas are almost always terrible, though.
Not this one. Listeners, Final Forum is back on, and it's time for this week's topic of discussion. And as I talk to myself here... I will be discussing episodes 46 through 49 of the Dragon Ball anime, which is in the general... We are firmly in the General Blue saga now.
Absolutely.
The episodes are Bulma's Bad Day, Kame House Found, Deep Blue Sea, and Roshi Surprise.
Yeah, 4 episodes where a lot happens, but also nothing happens. Pick up where we left off with our heroes foiling Hasuki's plans to try and steal the Dragon Balls. Bulma and Goku fly off on Nimbus to go find the next Dragon Ball, which is firmly in Blue's territory. He's currently searching for it. Arrive They discover that it's at the bottom of the ocean. They're going to need to figure out some other way to get to the ball. Yeah, so they arrive where they think the Dragon Ball is. They find out that it's underwater. They try to use a capsule to get a submarine to dive, and instead find Bulma's dad's porn stash. That's STASH, not mustache. That's just wanted to clarify. So they decide that they're going to need a little extra help to get this Dragon Ball, and after Goku saves them from a couple of Red Ribbon nothings, they decide to fly off to see Master Roshi to see if they can maybe borrow a submarine capsule from him. They get to Kame House pretty quickly on Kinto-un, barter essentially for use of the submarine in trade for Bulma's watch that she's been using to shrink herself. Roshi sees this in action, decides he wants to keep it for himself. We find out why pretty quickly, but it turns out he doesn't currently have his submarine. Krillin and Launch have taken it to the mainland to go shopping. So they obviously have to wait for them to come back before they can use it. While they wait, Roshi tries to and it's so terrible. He tries to manipulate Bulma to going to the bathroom, where he hides while shrunk to try and see her without her pants on. Disgusting. But he gets what he deserves, and he falls in the toilet and gets flushed. Eventually, Krillin and Launch return with the submarine. They start to discuss where they need to take the submarine to go search for the Dragon Ball. They check the map with Krillin. They discover there was apparently some sort of pirate base in the area or something like that. So we get our first whispers of a pirate treasure. Meanwhile, Red Ribbon has informed Blue that Goku is around. They ask him to like go in the general direction of where he is, because they've got their own version of a dragon radar, and scout the area out. They discover Kame House and mistake Roshi for the genius scientist that developed his dragon radar. So they come up with this fiendish plot to split Blue's forces into two teams. Team A, led by Blue. Team B, led by his right-hand man. I don't remember if he actually mentioned his name or not.
I don't think so. Not in the dub, at least.
Well, it's this short, squat, stout little man who has a penchant for whips. So they split their forces. Our heroes, that is Goku, Krillin, and Bulma, hop in the submarine. They start to go investigate for the Dragon Ball. General Blue's Team A goes to pursue them, while Team B goes to try and capture Kame House. The hero's sub is traveling to the Dragon Ball. Roshi is continuing to be a perv, as opposed to realizing that he's a terrible person. He should probably do better by trying to do the same thing to Launch that he did to Bulma, and instead gets sucked up in a vacuum cleaner. While that's all going on, our heroes are finally down in the I guess apparently this submarine flies.
It's a plane marine.
I mean, they're all over the place. How have you not heard of these before? But they fly to where the Dragon Ball is. They dive down. They send Goku out with some scuba gear. He gets crabs, and eventually finds...
That's the sea life animal, by the way.
And then he finds this tiny crack in the seafloor that ends up leading to this cave system where our heroes discover, the Dragon Ball is hidden here. At this time, Blue shows up to pressure our heroes to try and capture them before they can get to Dragon Ball, and Team B is essentially landing at Kame House. From there, it's pretty much a bunch of action while our heroes are running away from the enemy sub, getting torpedoed. So with Roshi having successfully defended Kame House, our heroes end up retreating into the cave system, and they ended up finding I guess an air pocket.
Mm-hmm.
They ditch the sub, and they go to set up an ambush, and Krillin's like, what are you, crazy? They have guns. Never mind that these guys can grab bullets out of the air. But so they keep pressing further on into the tunnels. They eventually find a light switch, and it turns out, we've stumbled upon the secret base for the pirates, which means we're going to find the treasure. And everyone's excited and happy, and that's where we leave off at the end of episode 49.
Yeah. There, like you mentioned, there's a lot kind of happening.
There's a whole lot of stuff happening simultaneously, but at the same time, it's not progressing very quickly.
Right. So before we get into breaking down our new villain and our topic, we'll talk a little bit about just some general references and kind of culture from these episodes. So The planes that Goku saves Bulma from are inspired by these bubble-domed helicopters with nose-mounted machine guns featured in the Bond film You Only Live Twice, where Bond fights these trigger-happy machine gunners to save Kissy Suzuki, the Bond girl of that, or one of the Bond girls from that movie, who's played by Mie Hama, who was also in a film we mentioned in our episode about the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai quarterfinals, called Iron Finger, which is a Toho-produced Bond spoof film. I really like that movie. It's a fun Bond spoof. More Bond references arise, as we've mentioned when we were getting into the Red Ribbon Army in general. This would happen, but more references arrives when Blue is giving orders to his men from this microphone console that he's at. It's designed after and looks a lot like the countdown mic system from You Only Live Twice. People who haven't seen that movie would honestly probably most recognize that in terms of a pop culture point of reference today in the Austin Powers.
Yes.
When Dr. Evil has the character who's doing the alert. That is a riff on You Only Live Twice as well. So then there's more Bond, though, with the scuba diving that's featured in this part of the story, which is also featured in You Only Live Twice, and even more prominently in Thunderball, where there's these long, protracted underwater battles and action sequences. These are revolutionary filmmaking for their time, so it's no surprise that Toriyama would want to borrow as much as he could, as no doubt being a Bond fan, Thunderball's innovative action would have made an impression on him. I'm not a huge fan of Thunderball, but I get the appeal of it and why it was important. It's kind of interesting that one of the Bond films that features scuba diving heavily is the Japan set You Only Live Twice, as Ishiro Honda, director of many Godzilla films, as we've mentioned just once or twice before.
Hit our quota today.
He was actually one of the earliest innovators of underwater film technology. Not for a Godzilla movie, actually, but for his first feature, which is called The Blue Pearl. And it was about these pearl divers working off of the Shima Peninsula. And when I say innovator, I mean innovator. During looking into this in some research on earliest feature-length movies that use a lot of extensive underwater filming, I did find that there were like a bunch of, short films, like under 30 to 20 minutes, that used a lot of underwater filming kind of prior to this. But I only found one instance of a feature-length, full-length film that was not intended to be a straight-up documentary prior to Honda's 1951 film, which was made by an Australian biologist and diver, Hans Haas, in 1947, called Men Among Sharks. Given the way international film distribution worked in those days, it's pretty unlikely that Honda ever saw this movie, and almost certainly he'd have no knowledge of the methods Haas used to do his underwater filming. So The Blue Pearl is the first Japanese film ever to use underwater filming, and unfortunately, it's never seen a wide release. I don't think it's even on home video in Japan. I don't think if you wanted to see it, you could, import a version of it. I think you have to, know someone that has a film print.
I mean, I don't purport to have a huge knowledge of movies, but I've definitely never heard of it before, so...
Yeah. But anyways, remember a moment ago I mentioned Mie Hama. Well, she makes an appearance again in our next bit of trivia here as the mini-sub that shoots out of the main sub from the Red Ribbon Army when the area gets too tight, is based on basically the exact same thing happening in the film King Kong Escapes, where Mie Hama plays a villainess named Madame Piranha, which is an awesome name. And she's in league with the evil Doctor Who, spelled H-U, not, an evil version of Doctor Who.
Which would have been very interesting.
And they're attempting to take over the world by crafting a mechanical version of Kong to obtain a radioactive isotope called like Chemical X or something like that. It's been a minute since I've seen this movie. And I might mean that literally, like 1 minute. But they want to use it to create WMDs or energy source or something and kind of take over the world. If you like kaiju and Bond, and especially like old school 60s Bond, and you want a fusion of the two with an added bit of whimsy and feeling like a borderline cartoon brought to life, King Kong Escapes is one of the best movies you could watch in that regard. It's silly fun, but it's a lot of silly fun. So back to Dragon Ball. When Roshi winds up getting flushed down the toilet, he becomes a literal dirty old man. Remember, we've talked a lot about how Japanese view old men who hang out with women by definition as dirty old men. Well, Roshi is now a literal dirty old man. Krillin has reverted to wearing his original clothing, his like yellowish orange robes from his time as a Shaolin monk, which is meant to kind of denote that unlike Goku, he's not been keeping up with his turtle hermit training, and he's been slacking a little bit in his Shugyo. The leader of Team B, the B team that attacks Roshi, is modeled after Heinrich Himmler. Only Toriyama makes him fat rather than thin because you got to throw some Toriyama subversion in there. This is just more Red Ribbon Army as Nazi stand-in material. Interesting note is if you look around the Red Ribbon Army and all the characters that are surrounding Blue as his henchmen, there's a lot of animals. Toriyama was asked about this once. Why are there so many animals prone to being evil henchmen in the dragon world? And his response is, quote, "It's a pain to draw different looking humans," unquote.
Classic Toriyama.
So there you have it. I'm sure it's that combination of, as we talked about, he thinks all his female characters look the same. So it's that classic Toriyama laziness, but also certainly tinged with a hint of his self-consciousness about his abilities, right? To draw a lot of different looking people. So straight from the man himself, it's just a pain to try to draw different looking humans. We've got also a few more Journey to the West inspirations. Bulma is attacked by planes and needs rescuing. That's a reference to how Xuanzang constantly is attacked by demons or monsters, and he needs Sun Wukong to save the day. We talked about that a lot too during the Pilaf arc, how that's sort of Bulma's role here. She's the stand-in for Xuanzang. And also, the underwater cave system has inspirational ties to a story in Journey to the West where Sun Wukong spends time in the realm of the Dragon King. So that's kind of where that all comes from.
And speaking of underwater kingdoms and inspirational points, that brings us to General Blue, the man himself. He's yet another indicator, as General White was, that the color naming conventions of the Red Ribbon Army are more than just simple colors, but that they also reveal something about the character or his setting. White was in a snowy tundra, Blue's in an underwater setting. It's also, shocker, the complete opposite of the setting of Muscle Tower, being bright, tropical, and summery, which is also a contrast with the ideas typically spawned by invoking the color blue, which is typically like melancholy or sadness. We got contrasts on contrasts on contrasts. But Blue himself is the ideal Ubermensch. He's the ultimate Aryan with blue eyes and blonde hair. He's a bit of a repurposed Dr. Slump character in terms of face and hair. The final antagonist of the story, Dirtz Kibalt, and I think I said that right. His clothing's modeled after the German brown shirts, who were the initial stormtroopers of Hitler's army and the predecessors of the SS. Furthering his Nazi influence are the spread eagle on his belt, his calf-high jackboots, which were both synonymous with Nazis. Also, some of his language is tinged ever so slightly with German and SS slang, such as calling Goku and Bulma specifically a group, as that was what the SS referred to their teams of 10 or fewer, which just kind of further drives the comparison point home. His speech patterns, though, are effeminate. Once again, as many other things in the show, something easier to pick up on in the original Japanese is he's using a lot of pronouns and modifiers to words that women typically use in Japanese to soften their speech. The English equivalent would be almost driving up an inflection point at the end of the sentence so that everything sounds like it's a cute question. His Japanese voice actor also typically voiced high-pitched female voice characters in previous roles. He also has an affinity for prettier things such as roses, often holds them daintily, and is very neat and concerned about his personal beauty. Also, as well as the cleanliness of his men as well. There's a point very early on in his introduction where he has a man executed for picking his nose,
Yes.
and then orders somebody else to sanitize his workstation. What does all this mean? Well, a few episodes from now, Toriyama will unveil his punchline to the character. It's hard to pick up on in the translations of the anime, but in the manga, and even the translated manga, they make it pretty plain. At one point, Bulma will nuzzle up to Blue because, as always, Bulma's easily swayed by a pretty face and a good body. Blue recoils in disgust, and Bulma says, "Whoa, that didn't work? He must be gay." Blue reacts with quite a bit of rage, almost as if overcompensating. Bulma tries to nuzzle up against Blue once again, and the man says he's going to be sick. There it is. Despite outwardly being the platonic ideal of a Red Ribbon Army soldier, and more to the point, a member of Hitler's SS, General Blue is gay. Blue himself never says so, but it's unmistakable in the context of the story when you put all the pieces together, many of which are outlined directly here, such as the mannerisms and speech, but then also when you contextualize everything in Toriyama terms. Of course, Blue would outwardly be everything an ideal Nazi should be, but then inwardly be the type of person Hitler would want to wipe off the face of the earth. This is a Toriyama story. We've talked about this extensively, about how much the man loves his contrasts and contradictions. Furthermore, there's going more specifically to the Japanese language itself. Bulma isn't the only one who calls Blue gay. Krillin does too. But it's only Bulma who gets under Blue's skin when she does so. Why is this? Well, because the word Bulma uses when she calls him gay is a slur. And there's probably a couple different examples you can think of in English. I'm not going to say it. It's very rude. I'm not going to do it. But yeah, essentially, that's she's calling him a bad name, and that's why the overreaction. And of course, a gay man would be offended by a slur used against him.
It's an unfortunate slang term. I'll leave it at that. It's a term I unfortunately I'll self-cancel here. I used to use when we were growing up and we were kids. It was a thing that meant that you just said to people. Right.
And this is one of those things where like you say it was a different time, and clearly as I have gotten older and I have become more enlightened, those words are no longer part of my vocabulary.
Yes, absolutely. The Office did an episode damn near about that word.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be odd though to have a gay man prominently in a role in a gay hating group? And before we get down the rabbit hole of people being like, "Was the Red Ribbon Army really gay hating?" Just briefly note that when Krillin calls Blue gay, he does so while marveling that a gay man would be in the Red Ribbon Army, which suggests that in the universe of Dragon Ball, the Red Ribbon Army has a known policy against gay people. So even more of that, they're the Nazis, right?
Oh, yeah.
History, though, in fact, Nazi history has already set a precedence for having gay people in gay-hating groups. One of the co-founding members of the precursor to the SS, which I think was called like the SA, was Ernst Röhm, a man who was well known among the inter-Nazi party for being best friends with Hitler, who ostracized and murdered gays, and gay himself. In fact, many of Röhm's officers were gay as well, and Hitler made an exception for them because he felt their usefulness as warriors outweighed their sexual preferences. Röhm was ultimately executed when Heinrich Himmler fabricated a supposed coup against Hitler by Röhm, and Hitler then redoubled his efforts to purge gays from among the Nazi ranks. Now, does Toriyama know any of this specifically in those terms? Again, probably not explicitly, but he is actually a World War II history enthusiast. So the general story of the irony and maybe kind of twisted humor that Hitler was friends with and surrounded by gays while pursuing their extermination may have made its way to Toriyama in general terms. I mean, I think anyone who's, steeped in that even a little bit kind of picks up on some of those things. He may have had a black man working with him or a Jewish man working with him and things like that to meet he was an ends justify the means person, right? So
and there are some parallels to other political figures being involved with gay individuals while publicly maybe having anti-gay stances. We're probably not going to get into that though. But there's also like the stereotype of like a closeted homosexual person hating homosexuals it's not an appropriate trope, but it does exist. It is out there, so it's not impossible that it maybe just popped in his head as well.
Right. So as a result of all of this, Blue is one of the most complicated characters in Dragon Ball. And we'll meet others for sure who push the envelope of what's considered acceptable. Mr. Popo. But Blue is right up there with the most problematic. So
I'm not looking forward to talking about Mr. Popo.
So let's talk about it a little bit. I mean, I think I did this in the last episode too. Peek behind the curtain here. This episode's being recorded way ahead of time. Now, in a weird way, it might actually still be relevant. It might even only end up being a month or two ahead of time, but we're recording this during Pride Month.
It's true.
So
matter of fact, my wife and I are going to Pride events tomorrow.
Oh, I'm going to a swim meet. So, but yeah, we're recording this during Pride Month, and it's a interesting topic to discuss because Japan has never been much of a leader in gay rights. And if you break this down into the very basics of it, I was mentioning to some friends in a message thread today, hey, I'm going to be recording an episode tonight about General Blue, the gay character from Dragon Ball. And one of my friends who doesn't know Dragon Ball was like, they let gay people be in a Japanese show? And I was like, yeah, because the joke is, ha ha, the villain is gay. And he was like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Just a little bit.
And it is. I mean, that's the reality is that it's an unfortunate sort of decision, but I'll say again, this is one of those we mentioned just a moment ago. Once your vocabulary expands and you drop those words from your vocabulary, but it was a different time. Well, it was also a different time, in the 80s, living in Japan, making that kind of joke. It's not intended. And I really think if you really watch this, it's never a joke about gays. Like Blue is never, the joke is not really that he's gay. The joke is he's not inwardly what he appears to be outwardly.
I also think a little bit of the joke is kind of playing on the fact that like Bulma can't attract a man.
Yeah, so it's using stereotypes, and there are some unfortunate stereotypes. You could read it too if you want to feel a little bit better about it, although I don't know that it hits this level. Like, I don't think this was ever really personally the intention, but you could read it as like you're poking fun at the Nazis, the idea that one could be so intolerant while being one of the things you claim to hate so much, and being kind of stereotypically one of those things that you claim to hate so much, because that is, I don't know that that's personally the intention in this, but that is kind of a trope of a lot of these kinds of characters that are used throughout fiction in general. You've got a lot of like a pretty good example, a decent, not great, but a decent corollary in a recent movie is in X-Men Days of Future Past, when Peter Dinklage is playing Trask, and he is, he hates mutants and wants everything to be for humans alone. But Peter Dinklage is a little person. Like, he is himself something off of the normal ideal human, if you'll allow me to say that, right? That is a trope though that's used in storytelling is, like my daughter and I are currently reading volume 1 of Wonder Woman, written by, I believe, Greg Rucka. Did I mention this I feel like I mentioned this on the last episode.
I think you might have quickly in passing, yes.
And there's a character in that who despises Wonder Woman. And her whole thing is she's trying to mudsling Wonder Woman and tear her down. And if you just notice, I said it's she. She hates Wonder Woman. And another character is like, you're both like strong, independent women who want women to learn to stand up for themselves. Like, why do you hate her so much? You are, in a lot of ways, like the platonic ideal of what she kind of wants people to be. How could you hate that so much? And, the answer kind of comes back of, well, she didn't earn it. And she has a lot of, I don't want to say good reasons for hating Wonder Woman, but she has like a rationale to her. And I just think that's like a parallel here. Like that sort of storytelling is still done. The idea of this person sort of being a prominent member of a group that wants to tear down a thing while being that thing themselves.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that's more the joke.
Yeah, I think it's more the hypocrisy and then also the dig at Bulma a little bit.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the thrust of that joke, because it doesn't really come up in any other, like his own men don't like make comments about it. Like it's just those two specific instances where it's explicitly brought up. He doesn't talk about it himself. I mean, let's be honest, the tone that he sets as a commander is a pretty brutal one too, on top of that. Just executing dudes for even the smallest mistakes.
And Krillin doesn't mock him for being gay. He is nonplussed that a member of the Red Ribbon Army would be gay. But he doesn't, he's not like, haha, you're gay, like that's never the joke.
It's more the contradiction that he seems hung up on than anything else.
I'll say the thing about him being gay that kind of ends up being the more unfortunate thing is that you then also play a lot on him being very concerned about his physical appearance and specifically his face.
Yeah.
So like later when he gets in a fight with Krillin and Krillin like punches him in the face, he's like, "Oh, my beautiful, beautiful face." That gets into that like stereotypy. This is not a good usage of that.
Yeah, it's a little. It gets a little worse going forward.
And then, I mean, let's jump ahead a bit, quite a bit. In a lot of ways, mannerisms, even kind of facial features and design, Whis is very much a similar character as Blue, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
So do you think that is the Dragon Ball team having sort of progressed a little bit and shown that, Japanese society has progressed a little bit, that a character who now Whis has never hinted at being gay the way Blue is, but he's more effeminate, definitely has like a dainty sort of way about him. But is that a way of them trying to show some progression of like, hey, we're... I
mean, like you said, it's not explicitly stated whether he is or is not gay. So really, it's kind of up to the viewer's interpretation. Mm-hmm. And if you're making that interpretation, I think that's more shining a light on, hey, maybe you should update your method of thinking. Because like the mannerisms themselves aren't necessarily indicative of anything.
Yeah.
So I think if he did turn out to be what would be, I guess, straight for beings like him, just having a character that has those mannerisms that is not the stereotypical gay character, I think would be progress.
Right.
Just because, yeah, like if they did it again, that would be probably showing, no, we haven't really moved on from where we were in Dragon Ball back in the 80s.
It's weird. I almost feel like I feel like they would at least think they were though, right? Because it's the like corporate version of it's like the Office's version of no, I don't hate gays. See, I made a gay.
It's like all the companies coming out with pride
Yeah.
promotions.
Yeah, it's I don't hate gays. See, I made a gay be Goku's mentor in this round. You know, like there's a pretty timely quote I saw from, was it Ditko? Who created, I think it was Ditko who created Black Panther. Like I just saw it today.
I think that was Ditko. I'm pulling off the top of my head, so I could be wrong, but I think it was Ditko.
And I'm only thinking of it because I just saw it. It just sort of tangentially relates to what I was just saying, but just the mentality of like patting yourself on the back while at the same time you sound like you don't still quite get it. Like his quote was like, "I looked around the industry and I saw that nobody was doing blacks, so I wanted to do a black. I have a friend who is a black," and you're like,
yeah, yeah. Reading that is very jarring. Also, we got it wrong. I just looked it up. It was Stan Lee and Jack Kirby collaborated to create the character.
The quote was from Kirby then, because I know it wasn't from Stan Lee.
Yeah,
but just the way that like the language and the verbiage of being like, "Oh look, I did a good thing," but while also being like,
yes, like okay,
that's not what we say anymore.
It's like two steps forward, one step back type thing.
Yeah, and that would be my opinion of Whis if they wind up, I don't know, outing him as gay. I guess I don't think that character has sexuality.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that like, especially for like an animated show, if it's not important to the plot, I don't think it ever needs to be brought up explicitly.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I personally, I'm thinking they're probably never going to reveal it.
Yeah, I don't think they ever will reveal it, but I think that would be my opinion of it. If they did, it would be like sort of this is steps forward while taking steps backward at the same time. Like,
yeah.
Like, oh, good for you. You made a gay person be Goku's mentor, but he's still a stereotype. Like, that's not...
Yeah, that's not great. Not
using
great at
stereotypes in a positive way is still...
It's still bad.
Yeah. It's like that, there's like that scale of representation that goes from like... There's like the out and out bad of like using a stereotype and painting an awful picture with it. And then there's like the...
using the stereotype but in a positive way.
Yeah. And then there's like the using the character, but the fact that they're gay or whatever does not actually matter or anything, or does not really play into it, which is like a lot of what Marvel movies do, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Where they just have like one throwaway line of dialogue where a character will be like, "I like guys too." And you're like, okay. It's so they can easily edit that shit out for China.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you have the positive representation of like, oh, this, like, again, just because my head is on the MCU, even though I didn't really like the movie, the Eternals has a character who has a happy home life with his husband.
Yes.
And it is a pretty important part of the character, but it's also never given a stereotype to it. Like, it never has that kind of vibe to it. It just is part of his identity.
Sure. Yeah. And that's kind of more what I'm talking about. Like, we need more of that.
Yes. I don't know that we need it in Dragon Ball.
Well,
I'm
no,
torn.
probably not in Dragon Ball, but
I'm torn. I wouldn't be against it, right? You know, so many of the characters are in hetero relationships, right?
Especially now in Super, yeah.
Goku has a wife, Vegeta has a wife, Krillin has a wife, Gohan has a wife. I think Android 18 has a wife, doesn't he? He at least talks about one.
I think he means 17.
Yes.
Unless wait a minute, maybe 18 got really woke. Maybe there's a polyamory thing going on. I don't know.
But no, 17 has a wife. Mr. Satan had a wife. She, like, all these characters are in hetero. I would not mind at all if they were like, they wound up being like, yeah, Broly and his boyfriend, there they go. You know, like, you just had a moment of that. I wouldn't really care.
I mean, they're already halfway there with Mr. Satan and Boo being hetero life mates.
I'm shipping that now. I think it could do some good to have that happen in Dragon Ball. Actually, if you go to some of the more unfortunate parts of the fandom that exist on social media, there's a lot of people who, in their fantasy fights, be like, "Oh, One Punch Man couldn't beat Goku because he's some sort of homosexual slur, homophobic comment," and you're like, "What what are you doing?" So there's an unfortunate contingent of the fandom still, and I think throwing things like that in casually helps to weed some of those people out sometimes.
I mean, and nobody will miss them in the long run.
Exactly. So I'm not opposed to it. In fact, go Mr. Satan.
I mean, it comes down to whatever the writer wants to do is what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's Blue is, to my knowledge and memory, really the only kind of out and out gay character. I don't know that there's any character in Dragon Ball that we can celebrate for pride, unfortunately. Although Vegeta, he's a man of great pride. If that's horrifyingly offensive, I apologize. I'm grasping at straws now.
Yes, if you're listening and this is offending you, please forgive us. We are absolutely allies. We love the community and we want to see it continue to prosper. So please trust us when we say this is coming from the best of places. And if we have gotten some terminology wrong, or if you feel like we phrased something terribly, let us know. We're not above changing our behavior to make ourselves more palatable.
Exactly. And yeah, like I said, I'd be totally down for seeing LGBTQIA plus character appear in Dragon Ball. And I guess, that's the one thing I guess you could, when you start getting into the TIA plus part of it, I mean, some of these characters,
Dragon Ball Z Abridged actually did a fantastic job with this during the Namek storyline with Deborah and Zarbon.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, there was so Deborah, the way that the name is spelled is actually very similar to a woman's name, Deborah. So like everyone assumes Deborah is male, but she is in fact female in that version. And then Zarbon is probably not a very favorable interpretation of somebody who's gay.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
But he is coded as gay as a character, so.
There are no female Namekians.
That is true.
So
I can't believe we missed that. Yes, that's true. And I believe they're also asexual.
So Piccolo would have to be an ally.
So we have our LGBTQIA character. He's ace.
Yes. There you go. Piccolo.
Woohoo!
Happy Pride Month to Piccolo.
We can plaster his picture with a rainbow flag on our Facebook.
Like I already did with Vegeta.
I'm probably edging towards terrible territory again. I apologize.
And he's a super popular character.
Indeed.
Very well loved by the fandom and the community.
And he's good representation because he's a better father than Goku.
But so yes, as Bekinney mentioned, we consider ourselves allies, and we'll say we just are trying to contextualize, I guess, everything about Blue and this character, right? Because we're gonna be hanging out with him for at least a few more episodes. I think is his last appearance somewhere around episode 58 to 60, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, that's a pretty good run for a minor character.
Yeah, and then we get into Commander Red and Mercenary Tao, or Tao Pai Pai, however you prefer to refer to that character.
Mercenary Tao.
That character is one of my favorite things. in terms of the laws of physics. I don't mind doing this now because it'll be probably 2 or 3 episodes before we repeat this. But where he breaks the pillar and throws it, and then jumps.
Oh yeah.
And then jumps on the
on
pillar
top of it.
that he throws. If you could jump far and fast enough to land on top of a thing that you would throw,
you could already jump further faster than the thing you threw. It's like perfect for the character too.
Oh yeah. But anyways, I think that's all I've got to say about all of this, about General Blue.
Yeah, I think that that taps me out as well.
Okay. See now, Bekinney? Despite my perception of reality slipping, I, just had a thoughtful discussion. Boy, I sure hope this doesn't wear off as I continue to recuperate from our battle. I could squeeze at least another season out of this.
You know, if I were less exhausted after all those bloodline annihilation fists, I'd have flown to you already and proven I'm alive.
And also if you were real. Don't forget that.
Right.
Well, listeners, that about wraps us up for the day. How will I continue to delude myself into believing Bekinney is talking to me in order to continue providing me with content?
Can't you just use your scouter to hone in on my location and come get me already?
Will this delusion lapse once I've fully healed? Will Lord Frieza find me a new co-host?
I hope not, considering I am still alive.
Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kit. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.